Rev up your engines!
Well, it turns out the U.S. now only has a 25-day supply of diesel fuel. And you wouldn't believe what is delivered using diesel and what diesel is used for in businesses in the United States. It's actually a giant deal. And one of the things was, unlike gas, the diesel rebounded fast. And the coronavirus, people bought less because they weren't buying stuff. The trucks weren't running right. But it rebounded fast. So we're using up tons of diesel. Now, hilarious enough, the idiots that are in power, here's one of their possible solutions, which make no sense at all. The National Economic Council Director, Brian Deese, says, well, there's this stockpile in the Northeast of home heating fuel. Maybe we can dig into that. It's called the Northeast Heating Oil Reserve, diesel, same kind of stuff, right? They have 1 million barrels of diesel stored there. There's only one problem. The United States is now using 4.02 million barrels a day. So much for their reserve. What's that going to last for? 6 hours. It really amazes the moronic politicians that we have and the people that you're taking advice from. It's just too much. We got this reserve here. 6 hours is going to last, right? Come on now. I mean, does anybody do any research on this stuff? It took me 2 seconds to find this stuff out. And yet, they put these out. Oh, we got all this in reserve. Yeah, 6 hours worth, right? Now you might think, oh, how does diesel fuel affect me? I don't drive a diesel. Yeah, well, all the big trucks that deliver everything do. Diesel's used for all kinds of stuff, but mainly transportation. Everything's transported with trucks in this country. It was done politically. Lots of areas. When I was in Texas, after World War II, they dug up all the train tracks, threw them away. They wanted to use trucks and cars. Now it's coming home to roost. They use an awful lot of fuel. And now the diesel's kind of disappearing. I don't think their little political wangling is going to help it out whatsoever. The price of diesel's sky high for these poor truckers, you know? It's insane. And of course, we pay for it. The truckers have to buy the fuel, so they have to pass the cost on to the consumer, so it ends up costing us all a fortune. Meanwhile, the idiots in Washington are all dancing around. We got this reserve here. Let's let it, like the one with gasoline where Biden let out a certain amount, and it turns out that it was just a little over what we use in one day in the United States for gasoline. So that isn't going to solve anything. That's like putting a Band-Aid on somebody who's having a heart attack. Now here's an email from one of you viewers who got ripped off at a Toyota dealer. Scotty, you won't believe what happened to me at the Toyota dealer. I took my 2020 Toyota Tundra for 25,000 mile oil change. I just wanted an oil change. I got back and they said, they changed the battery. I didn't ask anything about it. They said, well, it was under warranty, so we changed it for free. But then I looked at my bill and it said, $285. So what's that? He said, well, the battery is free, but the diagnosis check for the battery was $119. I didn't even ask him to do it. Now they're trying to charge me $119. You know how long it takes me to check out a battery in a car? 30 seconds. I got a machine. You clip it on. You push test battery. It tests the battery, right? 30 seconds. And I'm sure they got the same equipment at the Toyota dealer, right? And then having the balls. He didn't even ask to get it checked. To charge him $119 to diagnose it, but, oh, well, the battery's under warranty because it's a 2020, so you get the battery free. I don't call getting the battery free if they charge $119 for it. I don't know, you know. And even funnier is this. After getting home, I looked at the service paperwork, and it says, in quote, customer states car does not start, low cranking, check and advise. But I never told them anything about the trunk. I didn't say any of that stuff. They wanted $119. Well, they got to have some rationale for charging that. So, well, the customer said he was having a problem cranking. The guy didn't do any of that stuff, but they put the battery in and then they covered their heinies by putting that in to say, oh yeah, you know, he told us to, and then they charged the money for it. The crap that goes on in these dealerships. I mean, I've known guys that worked at them, and some of the stories they told me are just unbelievable. I knew a guy who had a truck. It wasn't a Toyota. It was a Dodge truck. He took it in and they charged him for a new alternator. So he comes back and he kind of looks at the alternator. He says, this doesn't look brand new. I can see mine was dirty, but this one's cleaner, but it doesn't look brand new. Well, it turns out I met a guy who worked at the dealer. He said, you know what we do? We take good alternators off a car, sell them another one. And then we know that one's good, so we sell that to the next guy, and then the next guy just keeps going and going and going. So really, watch anything that happens, any of these places, because there's no saying what kind of nonsense they're going to pull on you. In this case, $119 to diagnose something that takes a whopping 30 seconds to diagnose. So watch it when you go to these places. You know, I tell people, don't take your car here for an oil change. They're always going to sell you stuff. It's just how it goes. Amanda G85 says, should I worry about my 2012 Nissan Rogue CVT? I got a 2012 Rogue with 128,000 miles. I've driven it for 7.5 years. 2 years ago, sometimes it revs at 2,000 to 3,000 RPMs when I go downhill when I'm coasting. I've had it serviced. Is it something to worry about? I know they have a bad rap. Well, yeah, if I were you, I would definitely worry about it. It is now an 11-year-old road with a CVT. I met a guy the other day. He just had his replaced, the transmission. And he had 140,000 miles when the transmission went out. Right? The CVT, the Nissan CVT transmission went out. And you know what the guy at the dealership said? The mechanic who did the work said, well, he says, this is the longest I've ever seen one of these Rogue CVTs go, 140,000 miles. You got 128. I can just about guarantee it's going to go up. But here's the good news. Prices are sky high. That is an SUV. Everybody wants SUVs. Take it to CarMax, any of those places. See what they offer you. Get rid of it and buy a better made one. I mean, you got this mileage out of it. Obviously, it's starting to go with it revving up like that. And when it does go, a lot of times you don't get any warning. It just goes and the car won't run at all. Then you're screwed and you have to pay a small fortune to replace that CVT transmission. The guy who did have his replaced, okay, it cost him $5,000. But all he got was a 1-year warranty. So if it broke again, he's right back to square one. That's all you get with it is a 1-year warranty. So I'd say get rid of that thing soon. Camry fan 316 says, my car squeals when I hit 85 miles an hour. I got a used 06 Toyota Avalon, 144,000 miles. But when I hit 85, it starts squealing. Hell, you're not supposed to go 85 miles an hour anyways. I've seen that happen. I've only seen two things do that. One is what you hope it is. The fan belts. People call them drive belts. Fan belts isn't politically correct because you don't have fans anymore. They're electric fans. They don't run off the belt. But I call them fan belts anyway. If it's loose or worn, you get to a certain speed, it can start squealing. And that's very common. So, change the belt. Somebody's changing. They says your tensioner's worn. Replace the tensioner. It's an automatic tensioner that tensions the belt automatically. And if it's worn, it'll get loose and it'll squeal. You do a lot of miles. You got 144,000 miles. The only other thing I've seen squeal on those when you're going that fast is the transmission was going out and the squealing noise comes from inside the transmission. In order to figure that out, watch my video, Finding the Source of Car Noises, Scotty. You get these headsets or you pay a mechanic and these sending units and you'd put them on the transmission. Sending units, then you'd listen to the headphones. You hear that squealing coming out of the transmission? Bad news, it means your transmission's starting to go out. And if it only does it when you go 85, my advice is drive a little bit slower, so it doesn't make the noise. But odds are it's either your fan belt or your automatic tensioner. That is very common on any car that's got that kind of mileage. Just change the fan belt and then change the automatic tensioner if it's worn and it's not tightening it enough. Chris 7 says, I got an 08 Toyota RAV4 with excessive oil consumption. AZFE engine with automatic transmission known for excessive oil consumption. All right, I took it to get the oil changed after 4,000 miles and it had almost a quart and a half left. That's all that was in there. Car rides great, but I want to make it last. I don't want to buy it. Is there anything other than a full rebuild to fix this? Well, unfortunately, no, there isn't. The problem with those, they did not make the piston rings. That's inside the engine, the rings on the pistons that seal. They would have to be replaced in order to fix it. But on the other hand, my grandson's got my son's old Camry. He's got the same engine in it, burns oil. He drives it all over the place. He just adds oil. What you want to do is get like 4-quart jugs, right? Put them in your trunk and then check your oil regulator. As soon as it gets down the line, 1 quart, add it. So you won't end up getting 3.5 quarts low like you were before. It's not that big of a deal. And he's been driving it 5 years that way. And it still runs. Still runs really good too. So you can only fix it by rebuilding the engine. It's going to cost you a fortune. My advice, put the oil in your trunk. Every time it gets down to that 1 quart low, add it. Then you won't screw anything up because all it does is burn it. It doesn't hurt anything else. It won't make the engine explode as long as you keep oil in it because of that flaw is a piston flaw. Now say it had been a bearing flaw. A bearing flaw, yeah, then it would let loose and it would knock a hole in the engine when the bearing let loose. This is different. It's piston rings. They're just worn and it burns oil. Now Ferrari says, do I need to warm up an old car engine during a cold morning? I got a 94 gasoline 4-cylinder engine iron block with mono injection. Is it necessary to warm it up before driving? I've made videos on that. Normally, you really don't need to warm up a car. You just start it and drive. You got a 94 with the 1 injector, throttle body, right? I'm sure your engine is worn. In the case of old worn engines, yeah, I'd say start it up, let it warm up for a minute or two. What the heck? It's old, it's worn. Hey, I'm 69. I get up in the morning. Hey, I'm a little creaky. I got to warm up a little. I'm not going to get right up and start fixing cars or run around the block. No, you got to warm up a little, have a cup of coffee, right? Well, an old car. Most normal cars, newer cars, they don't need to be warmed up. You can start them up and drive them. But that's old. Probably a good idea to warm it up a little bit. You didn't say what kind of transmission, but if it's got an automatic transmission, that needs to warm up too. The pump needs to pump the fluid through the transmission. So in their case, an exception because it's an old worn car, you should warm it up a little. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.